the question was about campaign finance and the super PAC issue and how much money was spent. America in total spent, the two campaigns and all of the super PACs, $6 billion to get this status quo. And I read today, I don't know if it's totally accurate because I think that these things need a couple of weeks to a month to really fully think about, that they probably did cancel each other out. And where do we go from here? I guess you'll probably see a lot more of them. But my sister is in Colorado, I mentioned in Denver, suburb. She said that watching television and listening to radio in Denver in the last 3 months has become unbearable. And so I think in some ways it was a law of diminishing returns. And then maybe some of the reasons that people stayed home might have been that reason, but the super PACs, I think, are here to stay and totally ineffective.
Well, of course, the biggest single video viewership at the end of the campaign was of the little girl who just said, will you please stop this campaign?
Barack Obama
I've had enough.
and Mitt Romney.
So,
that was like Bob Beckel. I thought he was going to cry right along with her.
So, you know, you know, it's always, to some extent, as you said, both sides. You know, I used to say that America spends more on marketing a hamburger than it does on its presidential campaigns. It now spends a lot more on the presidential campaigns.
And a hamburger would have been much more satisfying.
And so at a certain point, though, as people point out, a lot of people who spent a lot of money didn't win. It's not unusual. So, you know, don't think that just because somebody spends money, they're going to win.
Look at Linda McMahon. Yes, sir.
Oh. So hidden agenda and overt agenda. Why do you think Christie did that?
I just think he was being himself, actually. I don't really think there was necessarily an agenda. I don't think he woke up and realized that the Jersey Shore of his youth had been obliterated and thought, this would be very good for me for 2013 or 2016. I just don't think he's that kind of guy. I think a lot of us look at it and go, oh, this is what he's doing, this is what he's doing. But I actually just think he was just being himself, which I think is refreshing, actually.
Well, if G thinks it's okay, I'm okay.
Home.
No, I think, you know, here you have a moment. The president's been elected. I think America's been waiting for this election for a long time. And, you know, if you look at it, a moment, you know, just like when I worked with President Clinton and he won the second term. It's a moment at which you can bring the country together, unite it around some ideas to try to move forward.
The same is true for President Bush, but remember what he did was to say, okay, so he wins re-election by a much larger margin than President Obama wins re-election. He increases majorities in the House and the Senate. He says, I'm going to take on the biggest issue facing America, the biggest problem, Social Security reform, and the Republicans were behind him, so far behind him you couldn't see them. And President Obama runs on a campaign, and Romney, there's no specifics. I follow this stuff every day very closely because I have to talk about it for an hour at 5 o'clock every day. I don't know what their plan is. I guess they're furiously in the West Wing tonight figuring out, oh my God, now what do we do? Like, we have to have a plan. I got to do something. The first thing I would do if I were in the Obama White House, I would refresh my legislative affairs team. And I would go make nice with Boehner, Cantor, Paul Ryan, whoever else it needs to be, if he really wants to get some things done, because right now that's not the case. The 4 Democratic senators who won, the new ones, all ran opposing President Obama's tax agenda. So unless they're going to go back on their campaign promises that they made in the last 3 months, I don't see how he does something without some major stepping back and deciding, okay, what kind of a second term do I want to have? You can't name, Mark, maybe you could help me, but can you name a president that has had a great second term in the last 50 years?
President Clinton had...
He was impeached.
One or two potholes along the way. But ironically, when he left office, he had ratings as high as Reagan. And people look back, you know, it's interesting you say that, because people look back and they say, that was the last era of bipartisanship and accomplishments, even through
I don't think so. I would say tax cut reform in 2001, No Child Left Behind were 2 signature bipartisan achievements.
Well, yes, but they don't see, they certainly didn't see the Bush as an era of bipartisan accomplishment.
I think in the first term.
The way they kind of saw the second term of Clinton as peace, prosperity,
But why?
and accomplishment.
Because he decided to do what I just said, which is that he embraces Newt Gingrich and the pals. And the reason that America at that point, I don't think it's necessarily true anymore, at that point, center-right country. And so they adopt the language and the rhetoric. I know, because you came in and you stripped out all the class warfare language.
Well, there wasn't a lot of class warfare in the second term, but the truth is, both sides went at it pretty vigorously. I mean, before the election in '95, the government was shut down.
Oh, God, yeah.
You know, all of those things happened. Both sides saw the limits of where they could go politically, and then they made deals. And look, you know, President Obama is going to look at a second term. Politics is now largely out of the equation. And
You see a lot more foreign policy, I think. In fact, they already announced today that he'll be going to Asia, I think, next week. Remarkable, going to Burma. That is an amazing American achievement of continuing to try to help press for freedom and democracy there, and that was a bipartisan achievement. So I think he'll do a lot more foreign policy.
I was hoping you could talk about sort of your predictions for the Republican Party. Do you think it'll become more moderate or more conservative? And also your thoughts about the Latino vote. And just as PR professionals, are there lessons for us in terms of future people to target going forward? Thank you.
Well, I'll let Dana talk about the Republican Party itself, but I will say that I didn't understand why Romney didn't pick Rubio, someone who was Tea Party, Florida, and Latino as vice presidential candidate. It seemed to me that picking Ryan, you know, if that was a play towards white men in Wisconsin, it just didn't make any sense to me. And so when he had the chance to reach out, and remember, you know, Rubio was already trying to come up with a kind of a Dream Act variant, so that he could, when he had the chance to really move in that fundamental direction, he didn't do it. And, you know, you look at the demographics of the country, and I think a lot of the stories today pointed to the demographics. And you know, in 1992, the Latino vote was 2%, right? And so it hit 10%, right?
Yeah, you predicted that.
And I did predict that, yeah. And it hit 10%. It's the most really dramatic change in the country in terms of fast-changing demographics and interests. And every party is going to have to take that into account if they want to win.
I think that the Ryan choice, though, was not, I think this is, okay, so put yourself in, Mitt Romney is a venture capital, a private equity kind of guy, manager. I actually think that he made the Ryan pick based on, he thought that that was the best person to do the job, instead of thinking politically. Maybe you could argue that he should have done that. But he was one of the people that would like reach down and pull up somebody like, I think that this person would be perfect to run this company or X company. I think that was the decision that went into it. I think that the myth of the Latino voter has been broken. Not a bad thing. I mean, you'll hear some conservatives say, well, they should be conservative because they're like me, they're pro-life. Not necessarily so. And also on, for example, 53% of Latinos said that they were pro-gay marriage in the vote. That is not necessarily what they thought. It was about safety net, I think. What conservatives have had a hard time doing, and I put myself in this category, is not been able to connect the dots to say that a smaller government is best for you and your future and allows for that social mobility that we strive for in America. That limited government takes off those lead weights that have been on your ankles as you're trying to run the marathon. No one really can do that. I don't think Rubio can't do that. And I wish I had a better answer for you. I do just think it's going to take a little bit of time to think it through.